So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews here for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to be joined by an amazingly talented actress in the form of Eilish O'Carroll. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you. And I thank you for that amazing introduction. Yeah.
Now, I mean, obviously, the world has been a bit all over the place this last year and a half. Obviously, you're over in Ireland. How are things over there?
They're getting a little bit better. They have been pretty hard for most people. Getting back to normal, I don't think is going to happen for a long time yet. Particularly in my employment, in my career, it's kind of went out the window because of the pandemic, and it's the last one to actually open up. We just heard yesterday that 60% will be allowed in theatres, and so the theatres are opening as of the 6th of September, which is lovely because I'm doing my own show, Live, Love, Laugh, down in Ballybunion for the Arts Festival. And for anybody who's listening, that Ballybunion is in County Kerry, beautiful part of the world. So I'm doing my own show there and a workshop. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's so exciting. It's getting easier. It's been tough. It's been tough for everybody. It's been tough emotionally, psychologically, physically. It's really, we've never had to deal with anything like this. And when we've gone through tough times before, because I'm old enough to know that, we've gone through tough times before, but we had each other. We were able to be together as a community. And of course, that hasn't been allowed this time. And I think that has had the biggest impact on people's mental health and psychological well-being more than anything. So get out there and hug your best friend.
I mean, of course, this last year has been tough. I mean, for you, did you find yourself in the height of lockdown, learning any new skills, doing anything while we were stuck at home?
Yes, I did. I was very fortunate because I was introduced to a group of Shakespearean actors in the UK, and they were reading a Shakespearean play on a Wednesday, and they invited me to join. Now, I joined because I was thinking, these are all wannabe Shakespearean actors like myself, because I've never been able to get my head around Shakespeare. And of course, to my utter shock, they were all kind of very abled and very talented and all out of work actors like myself. So I learned to read Shakespeare. And that's been great fun. And that the knock on from that was they set up a poetry group as well. So we read poetry every Friday. So that was a new skill for me, a totally new skill for me. And also it was, it was still in my line of work, right? So yeah, it was great fun. The big plus was I made a lot of new friends, and that's, and I didn't feel so isolated and so alone.
I mean, the other great thing as well is that obviously people have been having to sort of get used to a new way of working. So obviously Zoom has become a big thing over the last year and a half. And,
it has.
And still being able to connect, appearing on radio, TV through Zoom. So, I mean, have you enjoyed the sort of the new way of doing things?
I have. I mean, thank God for Zoom and WhatsApp and FaceTime and Facebook and all that kind of thing, because it has been our only way of contact. And I do think, I mean, now, you kind of get to the point. I was on so many Zoom calls at some point that I thought, I just can't bloody do this anymore. I mean, I just cannot do it anymore, because you're so concerned about how you look from the waist up, which is a given, because most of us are sitting in our pajamas, which I no doubt you are, but you know what I mean? I can't see it, so so you're always concerned about how you look from the waist up. It's a marvelous resource, but it will never take the place of face-to-face contact. However, I think it will continue, because I think in some areas it's and I hope it continues, because you realize the value of it when you have family living abroad. I have my sons and my grandsons live in the UK, so I can see them. And I probably wouldn't have seen them as often, obviously, had we not had the pandemic. It's only because I can't get to see them that so I can actually see the changes in their little development and so on and so forth. So that's been a big plus. And I think we will keep that from a learning point of view, and for people who are at home because of a disability or whatever the reason might be. Yeah, I think it's a lifesaver for some people.
And I mean, like you say, for a lot of people, although we haven't been able to physically see each other, we've probably been in communication with people a lot more than we would have normally.
Absolutely, a lot more, right? Like we had a couple of family Zoom sessions. Now I have a huge family, right? And I think there was about 35 of us on Zoom. Now you couldn't get a word in edgeways, right? Which is typical our family anyway. But that would never have happened. So I had, my niece in Australia. I had my niece in Holland, and my nephews in Canada. So I would possibly Facebook them occasionally, or we have a family WhatsApp group. So it's only like the headlines you get, like somebody's getting married or somebody's just had a baby or whatever. But this was totally different. This was like to see their faces, even though there was a different time zone. We managed it, and that really made me feel good. Yeah.
Now we have to talk about, of course, Mrs. Brown's Boys. I mean, it's been it's been a huge part of your life for so long. I mean, do you remember the first time that you were made aware of this character of Mrs. Brown and the whole, show?
Yes, I do, because I remember when he wrote Mrs. Brown's Boys, the very first play, I was doing wardrobe and understudy for the female parts, obviously. And Mrs. Brown's, the very first play went out in Cork Opera House, and I was responsible for all the costume, right? So I had obviously a list of characters and so on and so forth. And so I got, some of them obviously were very detailed as to, there's the sons, there's the daughters, blah, blah, blah. And it isn't a period costume, so it was very easy to do. And I was given £50, 50 old Irish pounds, to go and purchase everybody's costume, including wedding outfits. Anyway, I managed to do it. But when it came to Winnie, I thought I had a picture of her in my mind as to what Winnie would look like. So she was this owl one with the hairnet and the rollers that you saw across Dublin, in the 50s. But never changed, you know what I mean? She also, I based her on a character that my mother's best friend, Nancy Pimley, who had a perpetual smile on her face. She never seemed to let life get her down, So this is the image I had. So I dressed this woman to the image I had of her. And Brendan was delighted. He said, that's exactly what I want. That's what she looks like. But a year later, the play opened, as I say, in the Opera House. And about a year later, the lady who was playing Winnie needed some time out to do an RTE production. So this is a warning to any actors out there. Do not take time out, okay? Ever, 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 right? Anyway, so I had to stand in for Winnie for a couple of nights that week. And I got to tell you, I loved her. I adored Winnie. And the rest, as they say, is history, right? So yeah, I based her on the character, as I say, of my mother's friend, and a little bit of my older sister as well. And now, like, she just took a life of her own, and I almost feel she's quite separate from me, right? And it's like, when I'm stressed about anything, I end up talking to Winnie. I say, now, Winnie, what would you do in this situation? And don't be daft about the answer, right? Because Winnie is not as daft as she comes across, right? So yeah, I could talk forever. Sorry, Matthew. I don't ever answer yes and no, right? I never.
I mean, that was the other thing I was going to ask is that, you know, with a lot of actors, when they play a character, they don't necessarily get much input into the character. So it must have been great to have so much input into Winnie.
It was. And I mean, you know, it's like anybody who's in a character, especially long term, they tend to evolve as well. You tend to kind of, you know, it takes on almost a life of its own. And the script is very helpful, obviously, because you have this like daft response from Winnie, where you say, well, okay, so she's a little bit away with the fairies at times, right? So, yeah. And I think I was able to kind of establish Nancy, and that was my mother's friend, was always in awe of my mother, right? And that's what Winnie does. She's in awe of Agnes. And that's why she takes so much shit from Agnes, right? It's like, you know, I've had people say, how do you let her put you down like that? And I go, yeah, but you don't know the backstory. You don't know what they've shared through their lives. So, yeah, you know, Winnie doesn't feel that Agnes is actually putting her down. So, and she said, you know, Agnes is always right. So yes, it's been a joy to do her. It's been a joy to perform her, and it's been a joy to see how popular she has become.
I mean, that's the other thing is that the show is huge, not just here in the UK and obviously in Ireland, but around the world. Did you ever imagine it would be so popular?
You got to be joking, Matthew. You have got to be joking. In fact, the year that the BBC asked us to do a pilot was the year we were wrapping up, because Brendan had said to us, look, I'm running out of money. We can't carry this anymore. We were still, I mean, this was like, we'd been on the road nearly 15 years, going from city to city. I'm just about surviving. And then it was like, can't do it anymore. So we broke for the summer with no intention of actually going back. And he said, if that changes, obviously I'll let you all know, but you need to go and get jobs. It's as simple as that. So that August, I got a phone call from the producer to say, listen, we're just going back to Glasgow for 3 weeks. And with three shows we were doing back to back, 1 week each. And it was one of those shows that the BBC producer came in to see, right? And the rest, as I say, is history. He then said, I think this would make, and there was a lot of negotiations going on, We made the pilot. We were convinced that was the last time we were ever going to see a studio, and because the BBC and the language and all of that, I mean, it's never going to fly. And it did. And not only did it fly, but it was like a 747 coming out of your lounge, you know. It was unbelievable. It was an explosion. And I still have to pinch myself, Matthew. I still think when people say, oh my God, it's a phenomenal success. And I'm going, is it? Right? Because it's my job. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's amazing.
And the other thing which must make it even more special is the fact that you're all, you know, in real life, you're family. So, you know, they always say don't work with, you know, anyone too close to yourself. But I mean, I imagine for you guys, you just hit it off so well because you've got that connection.
Yeah. And I think that it really helps with the connection on camera and the connection between the characters. And those who are not family have been with us with Brendan since the inception. Right, they've been with Brendan when he was doing stand-up comedy routines. So yeah, and they've become like family, right? Well, they are family. And that doesn't mean to say with the little house on the prairie, because we're not, all right? Or the Waltons, right? We have our fallouts, like any family, and like any large troupe of actors who are traveling and on the road together for any length of time. You know, people are human, and we do have our moments. But the beauty, I think, of family is that you get over those moments. You know, you actually not even realize, but it's kind of a lifetime pattern of behavior, isn't it? Right? You know, you can have a row with your brother out in the garden over a football, and then you could be sitting with your arms around each other watching a cartoon on television. So, yeah, it is. At least, you know, in any business, and they say you shouldn't go into business with your family. The big plus about the family is you can trust them. right? And I think that's huge when it comes to anything in life. Trust. Yeah.
Now, like we were saying before, obviously huge all over the world. Where is the strangest place that someone has come up to you and said, I'm a huge fan, I love the show, and you were like, whoa, I didn't even know you guys knew what the show was?
Yeah, well, I think the strangest place for me, initially it was Australia, when we made our first tour to Australia, because Australia never saw the live shows, okay? They were only exposed to the TV series. So the Australians, I think, believed that TV made us, right? Which it did, but that we were an overnight success. But I remember arriving in Australia, and as we came out of at the airport, there was a brass band, small brass band playing, and I remember walking past going, oh, geez, there must be somebody special arriving. And it was for us. It was for Mrs. Brown's Boys. And I thought, you're kidding. So when you go to Australia's, now I am recognizable now because I'm getting more to look like, and Winnie by the day. But at that time, there was a big age difference between myself and Winnie, and people didn't recognize me as me in Australia. And I didn't go around with the rollers in, obviously. I would sit and have a coffee. But those who did recognize it, they come up and say, oh, excuse me, are you from Mrs. Brown's Boys? And the joy, right? And other places have really surprised me. Spain, I was in Spain for a holiday about 5 years ago. And again, I was walking along the promenade, and this guy came up to me and he said, I'm really sorry, but you definitely are. You are, aren't you? And I'm going, I am what? He said, well, you're on the telly now as we speak in the pub. You're on, because they would play it on loop, right? So they were really surprising. Yeah.
And I mean, the other thing as well is obviously the show during its time on obviously the BBC has changed how it's appeared. I mean, obviously we had the standalone sitcom. Then there's obviously the all round Mrs. Brown's, the chat show. So
yes,
it must be great to evolve the show.
It is true. I mean, the chat show is a completely different thing altogether. Although he's kind of married the two somewhat, right? Like, but I think the chat show, I like the chat show because it is very different, and I love the fact that it includes the mammy of the celebrity, and just that's just a real feel good factor, because every celebrity has a backstory that sometimes they're very happy to discuss and tell you, but mammies have all the secrets. So yeah.
I mean, have you had a favourite guest that has appeared on the show? Someone that you've just been amazed to meet?
Yeah, I actually, who had a real lasting impression on me was Boy George. And he's such a lovely human being. I mean, he is so gentle, but there were so many, right? It would be unfair of me to say, Judge Rinder, right? He is, again, lovely. People, like even celebrities, and I'm supposedly a celebrity, although I don't see myself as that. But when I see other celebrities, I'm a bit like, Joe Public. I'm going, oh my God, it's Boy George, right? And shall I go over and talk to him? No, I better not go over and talk to them. And in fact, he was kind of the same about me, because he's going, oh my God, it's Winnie McGugan, right? So yeah, it is. They've all been absolutely lovely people.
And I mean, is there anyone that you were like, celebrities that have come to you and have said they're huge fans that you never even imagined would watch the show?
I'm trying to, actually, there have been a few. But what surprised me more than anything, I remember meeting a professor of English from University College Cork, and we were chatting, and she said, you're in Mrs. Brown's Boys? I said, yeah. She said, that is an amazing show. And I went, now, hold on a second. It's not what you call, like, in a literary sense, amazing. I didn't think. I mean, it's funny. And I love it, and I think it's extremely well written. And she said, no. She said, Eilish, she said, students will be writing their thesis on why Mrs. Brown's Boys was so successful. I said, are you kidding me? She said, no. She said, we have debates about it in various classes. And she said, the big question is why? Why was this show so successful? right? So, and if we know the answer to those questions, sure, we'd all be doing it, and we'd all be making ourselves an absolute fortune, you know, but we don't.
I mean, some of the best moments from the show, and obviously, you know, it has an amazing script, it's an amazing cast, but some of the funniest moments are when the script maybe doesn't quite go to plan, or that something happens. I mean, they must be fun to film.
They are very funny too, you know, and they're very, because that happens in the live show as well, where Brendan decides he's going to take off half tangent. I mean, the guy is a comic genius, there's no doubt about that. And his timing is perfection. And I'm so lucky to be working with such a comic genius, because I have learned so much about comedy, and I've learned so much about timing, and I've learned so much about setting up a joke, right? Setting up the punchline. Because I'm working with one of the best, right? I mean, the fact that and I'm not saying that because he's my brother, I'm saying that quite separate from him being my brother. So yes, and I love when he decides what he has, and I can see it in his eyes. I know he's going to do something. There's a little glint comes into his eyes or her eyes, and you go, oh, here we go, right? And you don't know what's going to happen. The audience loves that. We love that. And we're not party to it. People think, you know, it's staged. We are not party to that kind of thing in his head, what he's actually going to do. And that's part of the success of it, I think. The audience are not expecting it. And he does the unexpected.
And I think I was going to say, maybe that's the other reason that it's so popular, is because most shows would take out those sorts of, you know, mistakes and errors, whereas the audience are very much part of the show, and they kind of are another character.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of his kind of stipulations with the BBC was you do not cut out the spontaneous going off scripts. So as a result, there was one camera purely on him only. I mean, there's 6 cameras in total doing a sitcom, but there's one camera that is not allowed to do anything else but stay on Brendan, because they never know what he is actually going to do. Yeah.
And I mean, the other great thing as well is that we got a film. I mean, I can't believe it was, you know, years ago now, but I mean, is there ever any likelihood of another film? Would you love to do another one?
Oh, I'd love to do another. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because that was great fun to do. Very different, but great fun. I'd love to do another series, and that would be like, ooh, please. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I haven't given up hope. But I am looking forward now to going back in October. We're doing the Christmas specials and the New Year special. And we're also doing a live for Halloween. So it's like I've got my case packed already. Right, if I'm honest, because it's been such a long time.
And I mean, it is one of those shows that can continue and continue. I mean, I don't think there's really any. I mean, you get the impression that it's one of those shows that there isn't really an end to it. It could continue forever, and I mean, as long as she's still around.
Yeah. And I think, you know, comedy is all about timing as well. And I think when we first hit the screens, we were in a global recession. And I think people were tired of intellectualizing anything, comedy, you know, people had lost their pensions, lost their jobs. They felt very let down by the government and by the banks and so on and so forth. There was very little left in their lives to laugh about. And Mrs. Brown's Boys came on the screen, and that was like laugh out loud moments. And we got some wonderful, wonderful emails from people saying, you actually changed my existence at that time. To hear my wife laugh out loud when she had been down in the dumps, to sit and watch a program with all the family, teenagers included. Instead, they didn't go to their separate rooms, because we all realized we all loved this show. So we started watching it together. And as a result of that, when it was over, we'd all talk as a family. So, yeah, and it's a very family show, right? And it's a very Irish show as well, but it's a very family. But, you know, the matriarch is a global, iconic female, yeah? So, and everybody has a mother, and whether a mother or a granny or an auntie, who reminds them of, you know, they're reminded of them through Agnes Brown. Whether you're Italian, Spanish, French, doesn't matter. The mother is the mother is the mother. And I think that is why it is so successful. And that is why the mother, Agnes, can get away with saying the wrong things, very non-politically correct things. And people go, she's an old one. Or so my ma, Jesus, you couldn't take my ma to that because she'd be, yeah, we all have it, right? You all sit there sometimes go, oh God, I hope mother doesn't open her mouth at this one because, yeah. So, yeah, it is. So I think it's a huge comfort as well.
And I mean, for you, is there something you would love to see Winnie go through on the show going forward? Is there something you'd love to do for Winnie?
Oh, no, because I think she's just beautiful and lovely the way she is. You know, I don't think you could change. I don't ever want to change her. And yeah, and Winnie, the beauty of Winnie is that she will cope with anything that you throw at her. So if the writer decides I'm going to throw this to Winnie in Winnie's storyline, Winnie would just go, okay. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, fingers crossed the show continues because we absolutely love it. Just before we go, I just wanted to ask, is there any messages that you would like to give to anyone who's currently in hospital at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to find something to smile at, you know, when you're in the situation you guys are in, okay? But, you know, even if you're not feeling like it, right, put a smile on your face because it actually has an effect on your physically. And this too will pass, okay? You're in the best place for whatever you're suffering from, you're in the best place. And you will be going home. So, and remember, that people love you, right? Your family love you. And just remind yourself of the good things in life and give yourself a reason to smile. Give yourself a reason to get up in the morning. As I always say in my own play, be grateful that we're still above ground.
Thank you so much, Eilish. It's been an absolute pleasure. Of course, keep safe and hopefully we'll speak again one day.
And you too, Matthew. Okay, take care, my love.